Well, welcome back to another session of Just Me podcast. And today we are joined by Lucy Brazier, who I met for the first time a few weeks ago. And I have to say, you were more than anything I could have imagined, seriously. And also, you have an OBE. So, Lucy, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Sid. So I'm Lucy Brazier. I am the CEO of March and Publishing, which means nothing to anybody. But let me explain. March and Publishing is a publishing company which publishes Executive Support magazine, and we also organise all sorts of conferences and training. But we do a lot more than that. I have been campaigning for the last 12 years to get the profession recognised as that, a profession rather than a job. And to that end, I travel all over the world talking to executives and HR departments about how they can best utilise their administrative support.
And why is that such a passion of yours, though, Lucy?
It wasn't in the beginning, I have to say. I began as a publisher. I went straight into publishing at 18 and
Right.
worked my way up from being a receptionist all the way to being a publishing director of a multi-million pound publishing company. And when I was in corporate land, my last job, I was looking after 13 magazines for lawyers on the whole and all the events that went alongside that. And then I burnt out in 2010.
Wow.
And I went home to my kitchen table and had a real rethink about what it was that I might like to do. And I'd owned a newsletter since 2003, which was for administrative professionals. And I thought, I've always wanted to turn that into a magazine. Maybe I could do that, and I could do that from my kitchen table. And you know what? It was exciting as a publisher. It's a profession that is made up of 98% women. It's a fifth of the world's working population. And so that's about 500 million administrative professionals worldwide. 162 job titles fall under that remit. And so initially I was thinking, wow, what a business opportunity. Amazing to be a publisher in a market that's got that many people. And they weren't getting training. So I saw a gap in the market to put together a publication that offered training in print so that it was cost effective and businesses could go, well, I'm buying it and we'll tick the box that says we train the assistant this year with amazing training because it's the top trainers in the world that write for us. Great business idea, and so it's proved. But I think it was about 4 months after that I went to Milan. I was invited to go and speak at Milan. It was my first speaking engagement, although I'd done speaking in other markets before. But my first speaking engagement for administrative professionals, I believe they asked me to talk about job descriptions and why they were important. And I thought, Milan, wow, fun. Yeah, let's go to Milan. So I went, and I was there for 2 days, and the assistants that I met there were phenomenal. They were so passionate about what they did, but they were also so frustrated that they weren't being utilized properly. And I came away from that thinking, maybe it's just Italy. But that was a very interesting conference. And I suppose 2 months after that, I went and took part in something called the PA Retreat. And that was being held by Susie Barron Stubley, who at the time was the top trainer in the world for assistants.
Wow.
And sadly, she's no longer alive. But there were 14 of the top assistants in the world sat round a table and talking about the things that they were most passionate about. And they were having exactly the same issues. And I came away from that with about 70 ideas for articles in the magazine and understanding how much of a broad problem there was and what the issues there were. But also as a publisher, you're always looking for campaigns. And I thought, well, that would be a really good campaign. Let's see if I can get behind that. Because having been really high up in senior management, that's a different angle from all the people who are out there talking about this already. Usually it's former PAs, former EAs who are out there going, listen to us. But they don't necessarily have the business language to go and do that. So I figured I had a way to do that. And it's just taken over my life. The year before COVID, it was 183 events and 42 countries. And we're starting to get back to that. I've done all sorts of work in the background with the World Administrators Alliance, who are the equivalent of the G7 for this profession. It's the heads of associations from about 29 countries that are involved, representing over 300,000 assistants globally. And we have spent 6 years working on a career progression model, which is now being adopted globally by companies that says, here is a framework for how you can look at the different levels for assistants so that you can measure it properly and so
Mm,
that they can be treated as talent rather than a resource. And to
brilliant.
me, it's just really overtaken my life. Not least, I think, people say, why do you resonate with it so much?
Mm,
I think I was always a bit of an odd fish. You
mm,
know, I think I never felt like I fitted anywhere.
mm.
Publishing on the whole is a rat race, and I'm not a rat. So, I was always a bit of a fish out of water. And so I kind of understood where they were coming from. I just really felt like I wanted them to be seen for what they contributed
Brilliant.
and for businesses to appreciate the value that they bring. Because when you use your assistant properly, it drops to the bottom line of the business. And I honestly believe that you could change the economy if all the businesses in the world started using their assistants properly. So that's my mission.
How lovely is that? And going back to the beginning of your life, where did you grow up? Where was that?
I was brought up in Kew,
Okay.
which is near to Richmond upon Thames, next to Kew Gardens.
Lovely.
And my parents are both theatrical people. So my dad was head of drama at the BBC, and
Wow.
my mum was an actress, and my aunt's a choreographer. She choreographed Bugsy Malone, the film, and Me and My Girl, and those things. And my uncle is a musical arranger. Um, Although they're actually not any longer together. But my whole family is theatrical. So I'm a bit of a black sheep because I went into business, although I've become slightly more accepted now I'm on stage.
Ah, lovely. And but why publishing though? Because publishing is quite. I mean, it's quite a hard business, isn't it? I mean, in terms of deadlines and.
Do you know what? It's a total accident. When I came out of school, I worked in bars for a while, and I think that was a great way to learn how to deal with people and problematic people and multitasking and all that stuff. And then my dad said, there is a role going at my agency, like, a theatrical agent. And I can talk to them if you're interested in that, because I was really interested in that. And I went and spent a day there and they offered me the job. But I was Peter's daughter all day. Nobody said
Yeah.
to me at any point during that day, well, I don't think anybody called me by my name, actually. They just kept saying, oh, you're Peter's daughter. And I came away going, I love you, Dad, but I really want to be as successful as you in my own right. And
Wow.
then I got offered a job at the local paper on reception, and I was there 3 days, and they offered me a full-time job. Now, it's so interesting because at school, I had been writing for the school newspaper since I was 11. My first year, one of the first clubs I joined was the school newspaper, and I'd written for them all the way through school, up right the way through till the end of my A levels. And I actually also worked on the school magazine, which came out once a year. But it never occurred to me I could do that as a job.
Yeah.
So I got offered the job at the local paper. I stayed there for 2.5 years, and then I went to the Times, and I was one of the youngest people that the Times had ever employed. I was 19, and they said to me, we don't employ people till they're 21, but you got 100% in your spelling and comprehension, so we thought it was worth you being interviewed.
Wow.
So, and then I ended up being a group head there. And I was the youngest ever group head that they'd employed as well. And all the way through, I was a bit of an enfant terrible, really, until I burnt out. And that was a real turning point for me. And I always say to people when they say I've been made redundant, because actually when I did burn out, they made me redundant, that it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. It gave me an opportunity to get off the hamster wheel and to think about what I really wanted to do with a little bit of money behind me that allowed me to take time to think about it. So when people go, oh my goodness, and they write to me a lot, because obviously we might come on to talk about this, but social media for me is key. And I've now got almost 42,000 followers personally and 50,000 followers for the magazines. But they write to me a lot because I talk to them all the time. I'm a great believer that the money's in the conversation.
Brilliant.
And they say, oh my gosh, I've just been let go. And I say, you need to understand it's the role that's been made redundant. It's not you. And
Brilliant.
it's a great opportunity to work out what you really do want to do. And I talk them through the process that I use to do that. So, that's how I got into it. But I really love it. I absolutely love it.
And in terms of the love of words and language and reading, is that something that you had as a child, and where did that come from?
I think I was being taken to theatres and to films
Yeah.
since I was tiny. And I mean, I think I saw my first Shakespeare when I was about 6.
Wow.
Dad used to do the Shakespeare Festival at Ludlow. And I was surrounded by actors and writers. And, my parents used to host a New Year's Day party at the house in Kew. And we were always surrounded by famous people. And so you just kind of got used to these people who were using language in such a beautiful way. But I think it also contributed very much to me not being scared of talking to anybody at any level. I just see people very much as people. But I think I also just loved reading. I mean, I learned music at 3. We had a lady across the road from us who had been a pianist at the Royal Ballet School, and she offered to teach all 4 of us how to read music. And so I went to school at 3, and I vividly thinking, oh, A to G is the same as music. That's easy. And so I started reading quite above my age from a very young age. And I think I was a bit precocious, and I really was quite fiercely bright. I know the school I ended up at 11, Godolphin and Latimer School for Girls, is rated as being one of the top schools in the UK. And certainly they told me when I got in that I was in the 2% of top 2% of the country because I'd been offered a place there. So, but Mum would buy me books, and she would come and say, "Which one are you reading first?" And I'd go, "I finished," and I would have read like 2 or 3 books in the space of a day.
Wow. And so talking about books, so what are your favourite books of all time? What would if you had a top 3 or a top 5? What would be in that?
Oh my goodness. That is so hard because I have this row with my husband all the time in the nicest possible way, because we have probably about 5,000 books in storage, because every book is a friend.
Oh,
Every book is a journey. I believe when you start reading a book, whether it's a fiction or whether it's non-fiction or a biography or whatever it is, it takes you on a very specific journey. And when you put it down, it's like, oh, wow, it took me on an adventure.
wow.
And so, I mean, from my childhood, things like The Railway Children, which was just the most beautiful book, beautifully written, beautifully characterized, deeply shocking in some ways for a child that was being brought up in such a nice environment to
Yes.
suddenly go, oh gosh, that. But then lately, Michelle Obama's Becoming, I absolutely loved. There was so much stuff in there that really resonated with me. I loved the classics. I mean, I had to read. When I did A level, I did A level English and theology and classical civilization, and I read for 2 years. And after that, I didn't read for about 5 years. I just was all read out, But we did Lear and Othello and Tessa the D'Urbervilles and To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. It was all deeply depressing. Everything was deeply depressing, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. So what have you learnt along the way in your wonderful years on this earth?
Oh, and I'm going to apologise for the language. My grandpa, my granny and granddad were always huge in my life. They were really core to my values, I would say. But my grandpa always used to say, and he was an old merchant navy guy, when you please yourself, some bugger's happy. And I used to think, what is he going on about? And turning 50 has been amazing, because I spent my entire life going, they're going to be unhappy and I can't make them upset. And I must try and keep this balanced and everybody on an even keel.
Yes.
And turning 50 has really made me go, do you know, I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, of course I care. Of course I do care. But actually, now I am doing more of what sets me alight. Everybody is happier because I am doing what is making me happy, so I'm not constantly stressed.
Oh, lovely. Oh, lovely. That's really lovely. And what has sort of helped you? Mention about your grandfather then, but who and what has really helped you along the way?
Oh, so many people. And you know what, Sid? I I just wrote the acknowledgements for my new book,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I've missed people. And I know you've done the same exercise. But
Yes.
for me, goodness me, going through the people and who have helped me along the way and trying to work out
Mm.
exactly what that looks like and making sure you don't miss anybody is just horrible. But I have my own, what I call my personal board of directors, and they're from various areas of my life, and they keep me on track. And some are from business, some are personal, but they are all people that I know I can go to dinner with who will be brutally honest with me if they think that I am getting off track. And I think that that is hugely important. But also, and I will tell you this story. There is a wonderful guy that I worked for when I was first made a publisher. His name's Jim Hay. And
Mm.
actually, he ended up letting me go because I was a very young publisher and I probably wasn't very good. And I certainly didn't deserve the time he put into me at that point. But he was so kind. And even when he let me go very kindly.
Oh.
Um, but he is in the book in chapter 7 because I say he is the best executive that I ever worked for.
Oh.
And I talk about why. And he's also in my acknowledgements because I said he taught me the kind of publisher that I really wanted to be. And that is somebody who works with integrity. And that's what's core to the way that I am. As long as I feel I behave properly, then all is well with the world. Um, and I wrote to him because he's now retired and said, Jim, I wanted you to know this. And he came back and said that you're in my book and I would like to send you a copy. And he said, how lovely. You don't need to send me a copy. I've just looked at your bio and I'm sure there will be plenty of people who will buy it, however. And I can't think why I would be in it when it's to do with admin. So I wrote back and explained exactly why. But I thought it was so important to recognize that actually he had a huge impact. And I think that's something we often don't realize, that by
Mm.
taking time to have conversations with people and to behave properly, later on, people come to you and they say, I remember seeing you speak at this event, or you wrote to me, or I wrote to you and very kindly you wrote back to me and gave me some advice, or whatever it happens to be. But later on, there are people, and I think, oh gosh, I don't remember you at all. How wonderful, though. How amazing that you can do that. So I really always try and bear that in mind when I'm out there on the road and talking to people, that this for me might be another person I've met, but if I can really channel it and give them a couple of minutes of absolute attention, then that could change the trajectory of what they're doing.
Oh, lovely. And what obstacles have kind of helped and hindered you along the way?
Oh, well, the being made redundant and getting very sick was obviously not a good one.
Mm.
Um, really not a good one. But at the same time, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't been through it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, I think sometimes, and again, the older I get, the more I noticed it. There is a rhythm to life, and when things happen that are really bad, or in your head they're really bad, later on you go, "Oh, I see. I see what that was all about." And I truly believe that everything in your life is either a lesson or a blessing,
Mm.
and you know, you just have to recognize which are which, and sometimes that doesn't come until later on with hindsight.
Oh, lovely. Oh, lovely. And how do you keep going when things get tough? Because I know they do, and they have. But where's that inner Lulu that comes out that just kicks back and keeps going?
I think the time in my life where I was most scared is where my first marriage broke up and I was 2 months pregnant with my third child. I
Wow.
had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and another one on the way, and no money and nowhere to live, and I will never be that scared again.
Wow.
And so it's a reference point. And the other thing is, when I got let go, it was another really scary situation for me.
Mm.
But I think it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yes.
And you just have to go, well, what is the next thing that I have to do in order to put one foot in front of the other? And
Yes.
that's the same when you're very tired also, I think. I find that there are occasions where I feel very overwhelmed and very tired. Not often. And sometimes I think, this is too hard. Maybe I should go back to work. And then I give myself a really strong talking to. And I think about the commute into London that was 2 hours there and 2 hours back a day. And I think, I am so blessed. I
Mm.
spend my life reading things that are inspirational, listening to inspirational people, and changing lives. And I have people all over the world that are looking up to me as a role model, whether I deserve it or not. And that comes with responsibility. So I
Yeah.
say, all right, enough, stop it. You have no time for a pity party. You are actually really blessed. Just get out there and do what it is that you were sent to do.
Oh, lovely. That's really lovely. Love that. And what advice would you give your younger self if you could go back to that 18-year-old that was just about to start in the publishing world?
Don't take things so seriously. You
Oh,
know, life is not going to be catastrophic all the time. I had a tendency at 18 to go to the catastrophic. Always. The world was about to end. It's like, I found a letter I wrote to my parents when I was 15, when I went to America for the first time. And they had sent me to go and stay with a couple who were very good friends of theirs who had moved out there, and they had a daughter about my age. But I went for 3 weeks on my own. I flew on my own at 15 and went and stayed out there and had a wonderful time. But I was very homesick. And I read this letter. I thought, oh my gosh, you are. You just, everything is just so, whoa. Just
wow.
get a grip. Go look at some of the things that are wonderful in the world. And I think, as I say, as I got older, you have far more appreciation for the things that are wonderful.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to others? Same advice?
Yes, I would step back and look at it.
Lovely.
I did a very at 18. I had been told since I was about 3 that I was going to follow in the footsteps of my uncle, who had been to Cambridge and had got 5 A's at A level and was fiercely bright. And so, all the way through my school life, I had thought, well, that's just my trajectory. That's what's going to happen to me. And then, in my final year of A levels, having been predicted 3 A's, my mum got really ill, and I ended up with a B, a D, and an E. And Cambridge said, try again next year. And I took a year out, and that's how I ended up at the newspaper.
Wow.
But my uncle sat me down and he said, you should make 3 lists. The first list is things you feel you're really good at.
Mm.
The second list is jobs that you wouldn't mind doing. And the third list is things that, as job roles, if qualifications were no object, you wouldn't mind doing.
Wow.
And then look for the commonalities.
Wow.
Now, I think we teach our kids very often what they want to be. We really focus on what they want to be rather than focusing on what they want to do. And for me, I wanted to be up on stage, for sure. I mean, I sang in wine bars for a year when I left school. And, I'd acted all the way through and been involved with drama clubs and everything else, but I wasn't that good. And I realized that quite quickly. I wanted to travel, for sure. I wanted to write. And I didn't know, and I wanted to teach. When I was 5, we had a blackboard in my playroom, and I used to sit my brothers and sisters down, who were tiny at that point, and teach them what I learned at school that day. So, all those things were things I wanted to do, but I didn't know there was a job that I could do that would do all those things, and I seem to have created it. And I was having this conversation with my sister quite recently, and she teaches not children, young adults with severe learning disabilities. And she is genius at it. I mean, she is absolutely phenomenal at it. But she said, when I came out of school, nobody talked to us about roles like that. It was all lawyers or accountants, and I think we have a tendency in schools to have education that's in a box. And rather than saying to kids, what do you want to do? We talk about what you want to be. And I think very often it means that people miss their mark and don't have the opportunity to do what makes them shine.
That's really lovely, though. I love that. And what legacy would you like to leave behind?
I'd like people to feel that I behave properly. I'd like people to feel that I was kind. And I would like people to feel that, well, the assistants particularly, that they were inspired to go and have the conversations with their businesses that they've never had, and to understand that they are awesome, because they are. And when we talk to them, they don't believe it. So if I'm able to do that and change the working lives of 500 million women in the process, which is what the aim is, then I'll have done my job.
Well, and why do you think people? Why do you think that the world doesn't recognise? I know it's changed in the last few years, and you've done brilliant work on that. But why don't people recognise that role of assistance as being so vital? Why?
We have a perception problem. I
Mm.
think the secretary of olden days, and by the way, secretary means keeper of secrets. So I think you probably do want one of those on your firm.
Mm.
Um, but I think the secretary, as we had seen it in the past, was very much a subservient role. The
Yeah.
secretary is always kind of portrayed as being the sidekick who is told what to do by the executive and belongs to the executive. And it really isn't that way anymore. The assistants are more likely to be found knee deep in project management and briefing documents and research and driving the administrative side of the business forward. They've become far more administrative business partners. And I think what isn't understood by most businesses or even thought about, because it's very interesting when I talk to execs and when I talk to assistants, I say, what does the business employ you to do? And let's make it very clear, it is the business that employs you, it isn't your executive. And they all go, oh, okay.
Mm.
And when I say what they employ you to do, they say, well, to do the stuff they don't want to do and to do the grunt work and to organise things for them. And I say, no, your role is to give them back time
Mm.
because the business pays the exec a huge salary, usually, to do the things that they are expert in. And
Mm.
simple economics says that
Mm.
if you've got two people and there are things that both of you can do, the lower paid person should be handling that stuff,
Yes.
leaving the person who has got the higher salary freed up to do the stuff that only they can do. And
Mm.
I have a story that I tell sometimes when I'm on stage that I shall do very briefly. But when I tell it to executives, that's the moment where they stop crossing their arms and looking cross that they've been summoned to a meeting to be talked about by their assistants because they suddenly realize it's going to give them more billable hours. And the story is this: there is a billionaire by the name of Jeff Hoffman who is a speaker all over the world. And he tells a story about going to see an eminent heart surgeon friend of his by the name of Carl. And when he got there, Carl was sitting there doing his own calendar. And Jeff said to him, Carl, what are you doing? And Carl said, I'm doing my calendar. And Jeff said, but aren't you worth $500 an hour? Now, Jeff says if you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. And if
Mm.
you think about that for a second, in effect, Carl was paying his assistant $500 an hour to do his calendar.
Wow.
How many things are executives doing for themselves that the assistant should be doing for them because the business is paying them their salary to do stuff that the administrative professional could do on their behalf? That is what I'm trying to get through. Because if you think about it,
Mm.
every time the assistant shaves 10 minutes off here or 5 minutes off there or saves an hour, that drops directly to the bottom line. And that's the executive salary, an hour of the executive salary that drops directly to the bottom line. And not only that, that's before they use that hour to go and do things that are going to bring in business for the business or
Mm.
the organization. So when I say I think you could change the bottom line of the economy by everybody using their assistants properly, I mean it. The
Yeah.
average age that someone gets management training is 46. That's a whole heap of management walking around with no clue how to manage people and certainly no idea how to utilize their assistant properly. So it's an enormous piece of work trying to explain to people how to do it. And actually, this book I've just published, I
Mm.
went with a publisher as opposed to self publishing, mainly because I wanted the PR that goes around it so that I can get my message out there to talk to more CEOs and more HR departments about this subject. And the machine is kicking in. So hopefully it's going to mean I can get to more businesses quicker and spread the word.
That's fantastic. And what is the magic that Lucy brings to the world? I mean, I know because I've met you now and listened to you many times, but what is the magic that you bring to the world?
I don't know. I really don't know. I love to talk. You might have gathered. um, and I hope that I break it down in a way that maybe other people don't see it. I feel like I have real clarity, particularly in this marketplace, as to how to talk to executives in a way that quite often the assistants themselves don't. I feel like there's a book that should be written on how to speak business, probably, for the assistants. But I don't know. I just, whether it's appropriate or not, I will say I have an enormous faith, and I very much, 12 years ago when I got really sick, went, well, over to you, send me where you want me. And I've just said yes ever since. And sometimes people say to me, you have enormous energy, where do you get that from? And I say, I honestly believe I'm doing what I was sent to do.
How lovely. That's really lovely. And what's your fizzy pop moment in life when something happens and you just go, oh, yeah, that really makes me feel alive? And
I get regular emails from people saying, you totally changed my life. And that is just amazing. They say, I heard you speak and I went back and I had the conversation and it's totally changed my life. That really is amazing. What else? The OBE was quite a moment, I have to say, going and collecting that a couple of weeks ago from the King. And I didn't expect it to be the King. And they don't tell you till you get there who it's going to be. So you open the programme and it says to be awarded by the King. I was like, oh, amazing, because I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of all the work that he does, particularly with the Prince's Trust, with young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. I think he's amazing. So that recognition was really amazing, and thank you to everybody who pulled together to nominate me for that, because I just amazing. What else? The day that I held the magazine for the first time in my hands. I'm looking forward to holding the book in my hands. I have to say I'm terrified because I now can't make any more changes, and I'm sure you understand what that's like. So let's see how that goes. The Global Skills Matrix, actually, I have to say, the Global Skills Matrix was 6 years of such hard work by the team that put it together. And I was there on the committee for the Global Skills Matrix and for the World Administrators Alliance all the way through that. And it kind of started from a conversation that we had in Papua New Guinea, and that's a whole other story. But seeing that come to realization was extraordinary, because businesses, when I present it, just go, you do realize you've got the missing piece here, and they get really excited about it. So that was phenomenal. So many amazing things, so many travels, quite often to places that I didn't expect, and it's always the people. And some of the places I didn't know I wanted to go to until I got there, and then you meet the people, and it's just, as I say, I just feel that I'm very blessed. My life is amazing. It isn't without downsides. I mean, people say, you are so lucky. And I say, yes, and the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I truly believe that. And of course, you see things on social media and you think, this person just leads the most amazing life and nothing ever goes wrong for them. And there's my fair share, I have to say. But I try and be vulnerable online as well, and to say when there are things that aren't quite right too, because I think that's really important. I don't want for people just to feel like things go wrong in their life.
That's really lovely. That's really nice. Very human. And if you were to use one word to describe Lucy Brazier, OBE, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Passionate, probably.
Wow. And have you? And is that a word that sort of stuck with you? From your very early age. Have you always been passionate? Because you talked about the role of books in your life and reading, and the love of the spoken word and the kind of the acted word in a way. But is that something you've always felt?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I think if you're bright, you always feel things very deeply. And if you feel things very deeply and you understand them, you want to fight for what is right. It's interesting, when I started this journey and I was starting to talk about the Global Skills Matrix, I sat down for breakfast with Zelda Lacrangi. And Zelda was the assistant to Nelson Mandela. And she's also the patron of my foundation, which is in South Africa. I am a director of a foundation started by a couple of really amazing assistants in Johannesburg, and we take kids out of Soweto and we train them for a year to become assistants, and then we help to find them work at the end of it. So I was sitting having breakfast with Zelda, and she said, explain this to me again. So I was explaining to her what we were trying to do. And she said, "Holy cow, Lucy, if you get this right, you're going to change the working lives of 500 million women." And I sat there going, oh, okay, I haven't really thought about it like that. And that's terrifying. So I went home that day feeling really quite overwhelmed and thinking, gosh, that really is a job and a half. And that evening on TV, there was a film called Made in Dagenham. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about how a factory worker stood up and said, this isn't fair. And I honestly believe that was on the TV for a reason, because I sat there and I thought, well, somebody's got to do it. So why not me?
Wow.
And so that's kind of where that's all come from. So yes, I think it's a deep belief as to what's right or wrong and trying to behave that way.
And in a way, you found your stage, haven't you?
Oh, very much so. I've spoken to audiences as big as 2,600 people. I'm back in. This is hilarious. I'm launching my book in Caesar's Palace because I'm there on the keynote stage on a panel in October, talking about the future of the profession in front of almost 3,000 people. So, everything from 10 people in some of my courses all the way up to 3,000. And I'm hoping we might get some even bigger audiences, but I absolutely love being up there.
Lucy Brazier OBE, wow. Thank you so much for your time. Love listening to you. Love talking to you. Thank you.
Oh, Sid, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been an absolute joy.